let's talk about strategy, because I have a hunch that almost everything we think we know about it, from movies, video games, all of it, it might just be completely wrong. No, really, just for a second, think about it. When I see the word strategy, what's the first image that pops into your head? I bet for a lot of you, it's some dimly lit war room, right? A huge map on a table, a few serious-looking people moving little wooden blocks around. Yeah, for most of us, strategy feels like it's all about these incredibly complicated, secret plans. It's about being 5 steps ahead of your opponent, pulling off some kind of brilliant, dazzling move that nobody saw coming. It's basically this high-stakes game of intellectual chess, and only a real genius can even play, right? Well, the text we're digging into today has let's say, a very different opinion. This quote just dismisses one of the most classic, brilliant moves in the book as being absurd. It's basically saying, you think flanking an enemy is genius-level stuff? That's ridiculous. And right away, that just throws a wrench in our whole pop culture idea of what strategy is. And this right here, this is the absolute core of what we're talking about today. The fundamental ideas of a good strategy, they aren't complex. They're not secret. They are incredibly simple. The real challenge, the part that's so hard it requires a kind of genius, isn't dreaming up the plan. It's having the sheer force of will to actually see it through. So, to get why simple things can be so incredibly hard, we have to look at the battlefield itself. And, it's not the physical one you're probably picturing. The core idea here is that we almost always focus on the wrong things. So on the left, you've got what are called the material factors. This is the stuff that's easy to count, the math of war. Troop numbers, supply lines, angles of attack, you can put it all in a spreadsheet. But on the right, you have the moral factors. This is the human stuff. Courage, fear, determination, the spirit of your people. And the whole point is that this side of the ledger is where the real battle is fought and won. And this quote just illustrates that idea perfectly. I mean, what a great image, right? The material things, the numbers, the guns, the tanks, they're just the wooden handle of the sword. Yeah, you need it to hold the weapon, but it's not the weapon itself. The real weapon, the sharp, precious metal that actually does the cutting, that's the moral strength of an army and its leader. Okay, so if the whole game is about maximizing these moral factors, these human elements, then what are the guiding principles? Well, they're not about complicated tricks or fancy deceptions. Turns out they are shockingly simple and direct. The first golden rule is basically this: keep your people together. Don't split your forces up unless there is an overwhelming, absolutely undeniable reason. It's so tempting to want to cover more ground, right? To be everywhere at once. But that is a total trap. The default, the norm, should always be concentration. And here's exactly why that principle is so critical. Your goal isn't to be strong everywhere. That's just impossible. The goal is to be overwhelmingly strong at the one single place and time that will decide the entire fight. It's really the simplest law there is. Bring all of your power down on the one spot where it matters most. Okay, so that leads to a pretty logical question, one that kind of pushes back on another piece of common wisdom. What about holding a reserve? Shouldn't a good commander always keep some troops back? Just in case, to deal with something unexpected or to clean up after a big victory? The answer here is just completely blunt, absolute. Holding forces in reserve when the truly decisive battle is underway? It's an absurdity. It makes no sense. Why? Because if this is really the moment that decides everything, holding back even a tiny fraction of your strength is just illogical. You have to throw everything you've got at it to win. All right, so if the best strategy is actually that simple, concentrate your forces and attack the key point with everything you've got, then why is so much of military history filled with armies just sitting there? Why do we see these long periods of waiting and doing nothing? This is where the simple plan meets hard reality. 3 incredibly powerful forces are constantly working against taking action. First, there's just basic human fear and indecision. The source calls it a moral force of gravity. The sheer weight of responsibility is immense, and it pulls commanders toward doing nothing. Second, you are always working with incomplete information. You barely know what's going on with your own side, let alone the enemy's. And that uncertainty always breeds caution. And third, and this is a brilliant point, is the natural strength of a good defense. See, just because you're not strong enough to successfully attack me, it doesn't automatically mean that I'm strong enough to successfully attack you. It is entirely possible for both sides to be too weak to attack at the same time. So let's try and pull all of this together. If the principles themselves are simple, but these forces of an action are just immense, then what is it that separates a good strategist from a truly great one? Well, it is definitely not the originality of their plans.
So, this is basically the whole journey in one spot. We started out with the myth that strategy is all about complex plans, that the key factors are the material ones you can calculate, and that genius is about coming up with something new. But the reality is just so different. True strategy is about simple principles. It's driven by moral factors, like pure willpower. And genius? Well, genius has almost nothing to do with the plan itself. It is all about execution. It's about having the raw strength of character to overcome all the fear, doubt, and uncertainty to see a simple plan all the way through to the end.
You see, true mastery isn't that flashy, surprising move. It's making the incredibly messy, difficult business of war look smooth. It's about overcoming all of that friction, the tired soldiers, the bad weather, the constant fear, the fog of war, and somehow making it all work in harmony. That relentless, successful execution, that is the real art. And we're going to end on this final and frankly chilling thought. None of this is just theory. There is a profound danger in believing that strategy is some kind of polite, intellectual chess match, because sooner or later you will come up against an opponent who understands the simple, hard truth that this is all about the brutal application of force, and woe to the side that is still thinking about clever little tricks when the other is coming at them like a force of nature.